What if the life you're living isn't fully yours? Jung believed we carry invisible burdens, psychic leftovers from past experiences, family history, and the collective human story. It's like inheriting an emotional bill you never agreed to. In his clinical work, Jung noticed patterns, people facing the same heartbreak, betrayal, or failure again and again. They thought it was bad luck. He saw it as the unconscious reenacting old, unresolved conflicts, demanding recognition before release. This repetition, Jung explained, isn't punishment from outside. It's your own psyche calling for integration. In Eastern terms, it might look like karma. In Jung's language, it's an unfinished conversation between the conscious mind and the hidden depths. A patient once told Jung she felt haunted by her life. Different partners, same emotional ending. Different jobs, same collapse. Jung traced it back to a neglected part of herself, an inner figure she refused to see, yet he described the unconscious as a living system, not just a storehouse of memories. It contains active forces like complexes that influence how we act, choose, and even suffer. Until these are faced, they act like unseen creditors in the soul. Modern psychology now supports this idea. Research on trauma and attachment patterns shows how unresolved wounds can echo for decades, shaping decisions and relationships, just as Jung observed in his patients nearly a century ago. When we ignore these patterns, they don't fade, they deepen. The interest compounds. Jung warned that what is not made conscious reappears in our lives as fate, repeating until we finally stop and turn toward it. He didn't speak of karmic debt as mystical punishment. Instead, he saw it as the psychological cost of unfinished business, the emotional charge tied to what we've refused to acknowledge or integrate into our conscious life. This is where people misunderstand Jung. He wasn't talking about debts to the universe. He was talking about debts to ourselves. Debts of honesty, self-awareness, and courage. In the next part, we'll see how Jung connected this inner debt to ancient ideas of karma and why he refused to leave it in the realm of mysticism. For him, it was always about the here and now. Carl Jung's ideas about karma were subtle. He never spoke in terms of cosmic reward or punishment. Instead, he used ancient language as a metaphor for how unresolved psychological patterns keep us trapped. In many Eastern traditions, karma refers to the consequences of actions across lifetimes. Jung took that rich symbolism and grounded it in the here and now, the patterns that shape our lives until we wake up. For Jung, karma was a psychological loop, not a mystical scorecard. It was about the inner conflicts we avoid, the shadow parts we refuse to see that keep playing out externally, again and again. He drew parallels between this and what he called complexes, clusters of emotion, memory, and belief that have split off from the conscious mind, yet still influence our choices without our awareness. When a complex is unacknowledged, it's like a debt accruing interest. The more we avoid it, the more it shapes our life circumstances, until we finally meet it head-on in conscious awareness. Jung used the term individuation for the process of paying off that debt. It's the ongoing integration of unconscious material into the conscious mind until nothing is left in the shadows. This is where Jung's version of karma becomes empowering. It's not about what the universe will do to you. It's about what you can do for your own wholeness, starting today. Modern therapists echo this view. Cognitive and trauma-based therapies show that bringing patterns into awareness opens the door to change, even if the external world hasn't shifted yet. In this light, karmic debt isn't a sentence, it's a map. It tells you where the work is, where the growth lies, and where you've been avoiding the truth about yourself. Next, we'll look at Jung's most misquoted line about fate, and why getting it right is key to understanding how karmic patterns actually end. One of Jung's most quoted lines is, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." It's often shared without context, and that's where misunderstandings begin. When Jung said this, he wasn't talking about destiny in a mystical sense. He meant that our hidden patterns, the complexes and unresolved wounds, silently guide our decisions, relationships, and reactions. We think we're choosing freely, but the truth is, the unconscious has already written part of the script. Until we see those hidden pages, the ending rarely changes. This is why karmic debt, in Jung's terms, isn't about punishment. It's about cause and effect within the psyche. Unacknowledged patterns cause familiar outcomes, and awareness changes the effect. Jung compared this to meeting the same kind of person again and again, or falling into similar problems in different settings. The players change only when we recognize the pattern and understand our part in it. Does the unconscious stop using it as a teaching tool? That's when change becomes This is where self-reflection and honest analysis matter more than any external ritual. Without them, we risk dressing old patterns in new clothes and thinking they've vanished. Modern psychology supports this. Studies on behavior change show that awareness of a habit is the first and most essential step to altering it. In other words, fate loses its grip the moment you become aware of how you've been shaping it. That's not magic, that's psychology. In the next part, we'll look at how Jung believed dreams act as messengers from the unconscious, often pointing directly to the patterns that hold us in karmic loops.
Jung saw dreams as direct messages from the unconscious, bypassing the ego's defenses. They speak in symbols, often strange or unsettling, but always carrying meaning. He noticed that recurring dreams often pointed to unresolved issues, the same way repeating life events did. In karmic terms, a recurring dream can be a sign that the debt is still unpaid. For example, a patient might dream of being chased over and over. Jung would ask, not who is chasing you, but what part of yourself are you running from? Dreams, he believed, compensate for our conscious attitudes. If we're too proud, they humble us. If we're too fearful, they show us strength. If we're blind to our shadow, they introduce it to us. This is why Jung never dismissed nightmares. He saw them as urgent letters from the unconscious, demanding attention to what we've ignored. In the context of karmic debt, a nightmare might be the psyche's way of saying, "You've avoided this too long, it's time to face it." He'd also stressed that dream interpretation is personal. Symbols don't have universal meaning. They arise from our own life, culture, and experience. A snake in your dream may represent transformation for you, but danger for someone else. The unconscious speaks in your private language. By working with dreams, Jung believed we could shorten the cycle of repetition, freeing ourselves from patterns before they repeat in waking life. In the next part, we'll explore the shadow, the hidden self Jung saw as both the source of karmic debt and the key to clearing it. Jung described the shadow as the parts of ourselves we reject, deny, or refuse to acknowledge. It holds not just what we call bad, but also strengths we've buried. In karmic terms, the shadow is often the creditor. It contains the unresolved conflicts and emotional truths that keep shaping our lives from behind the curtain. Jung warned that the more we repress the shadow, the more power it gains. It doesn't disappear. It emerges in projections, in the people and situations we blame for our unhappiness. Facing the shadow is uncomfortable. It means admitting we are capable of the same flaws, mistakes, or cruelties we judge in others. But Jung insisted this is the path to integration. By owning the shadow, we reclaim energy and potential we've locked away. Clearing karmic debt, then, isn't just about letting go of pain. It's about accepting responsibility for the parts of ourselves that caused it. This doesn't mean self-blame. It means self-honesty. It means no longer outsourcing our growth to fate or to other people's actions. Modern shadow work practices, from journaling to therapeutic role-play, echo Jung's approach. They invite us to dialogue with the parts we'd rather not meet. When the shadow is integrated, the unconscious loses its leverage. The karmic loop breaks because the lesson is complete. In the next part, we'll examine how relationships act as mirrors, often showing us exactly where our karmic debts lie. Jung believed that relationships are one of the most powerful tools for self-discovery. They reflect our strengths, wounds, and unfinished business. In karmic terms, the people we struggle with often hold up the clearest mirror. They trigger the very parts of ourselves we've been unwilling to see. You may think they're the problem, but Jung would ask, why does this situation keep finding you? What's your part in it? Sometimes the debt is emotional, a pattern we've carried since childhood. We keep meeting people who fit that pattern until we see it clearly. Jung called this projection. We see parts of ourselves in others without realizing it, and react to them as if they were outside us. The moment we recognize a projection, we take back that piece of ourselves. The relationship changes because our perspective has shifted. This is why some connections suddenly feel lighter or end peacefully. The karmic lesson is learned, the debt released. In Jung's view, the people in our lives are not random. They're participants in our individuation, helping us see what we couldn't see alone. When we accept this, relationships stop being battlegrounds and become classrooms. The debt isn't a life sentence, it's a teacher. In the next part, we'll explore how synchronicities can signal that your karmic debt is nearing its end. Jung defined synchronicity as meaningful coincidence, events linked not by cause but by significance. They seem random until you notice the thread. In the context of karmic debt, synchronicities can appear as markers of progress, signs that your inner work is being mirrored in the outer world. For example, you might think of someone from your past and they call the next day, or you find a book that answers a question you hadn't even spoken aloud. Jung saw these moments as the psyche and the world aligning, the unconscious speaking through events instead of just through dreams or emotions. They often arise when you're close to a breakthrough, as if confirming that you're on the right path. However, Jung warned against chasing synchronicities for their own sake. Doing so turns them into superstition, which blocks the real work. Instead, he suggested noticing them, reflecting on them, and asking how they connect to your current inner process. Modern research on attention bias supports this. We notice patterns more when our minds are primed to see them. In karmic terms, synchronicities often fade once the lesson is fully integrated, because you no longer need external reminders. In the next part, we'll look at the role of forgiveness, why Jung saw it as a natural outcome of integration, not a forced act. For Jung, forgiveness was not about excusing harmful behavior. It was about releasing the grip that the past had on your psyche. He saw it as a byproduct of integration. Once you've understood and owned your shadow, you no longer need to cling to resentment. In karmic terms, forgiveness means the emotional charge is gone. You remember the event, but it no longer controls your mood or your choices. Jung believed this release creates space for new experiences. Energy that was tied up in old wounds becomes available for growth. This isn't something you can force. Trying to be forgiving before you've done the inner work only buries the hurt deeper. Instead, forgiveness arrives naturally, often unexpectedly, as a sign that you've metabolized the lesson. Modern psychology agrees. Studies on emotional processing show that genuine forgiveness is linked to reduced stress and improved well-being. It also breaks cycles of retaliation. When you no longer feel the need to get even, the karmic loop ends with you. Jung might say that in forgiving, you are freeing yourself, not the other person. In the next part, we'll explore how personal responsibility cements this freedom and prevents new karmic debts from forming.
Jung noticed that people sometimes used insight as a shield, keeping the pain at arm's length by talking about it instead of feeling it. Modern psychology confirms this risk. Cognitive understanding without emotional processing can leave trauma and patterns untouched. Integration happens when awareness and experience meet. That's why active imagination, shadow work, and mindful presence are so essential. They force theory into lived reality. Jung's own life reflected this. He wrestled with dreams, visions, and personal crises for decades, often recording the raw emotional impact before he attempted interpretation. In karmic terms, insight without change is like acknowledging you owe a debt but never sending payment. The interest still grows. In the next section, we'll see how community and relationship play a crucial role in ensuring this work doesn't stall at the insight stage. If you're still watching, be honest. Have you ever known better and done the same thing anyway? What did that teach you? Jung saw individuation as a deeply personal journey, but not a solitary one. Relationships with partners, friends, family, and community act as mirrors showing us the parts of ourselves we can't see alone. He argued that certain aspects of the shadow and certain karmic loops can only be revealed in the friction of real connection. You can't clear what you've never encountered. Analytical groups in Jung's time provided a space for people to work through projections and conflicts in a conscious setting, using the group as a living laboratory for self-discovery. Today, group therapy, support circles, and even close, honest friendships can serve the same purpose. The key is trust and the willingness to receive feedback without immediate defense. University research on relational dynamics shows that people who actively work on self-awareness in relationships experience more stable bonds and fewer recurring conflicts. In karmic terms, relationship is both test and teacher. It offers the perfect opportunity for old debt to surface and for conscious choice to interrupt the loop. Jung believed that clearing patterns in the relational field often had a ripple effect, easing tension in other areas of life without direct effort. This is why avoiding relationships during inner work can sometimes stall progress. You remove the very arena where the unconscious loves to show itself. The task is not to seek perfect harmony, but to meet inevitable friction with awareness, curiosity, and responsibility. In the next part, we'll confront one of the biggest obstacles to this work: resistance, and why Jung saw it as a sign you're close to real change. If you're still with me, I'd like to hear, have you noticed certain relationships seem to activate your deepest patterns?
In karmic debt terms, resistance is like the final collection notice, the moment the debt demands attention before it can be cleared. Jung encouraged meeting resistance with patience, not force. Pushing too hard can trigger defenses that bury the material deeper. Techniques like titration, working in small manageable doses, are now common in trauma therapy and align closely with Jung's approach. He also advised curiosity, asking why a certain topic, person, or practice brings up such strong aversion can itself bring unconscious material to light. Sometimes resistance hides in distractions, suddenly becoming too busy, too tired, or too skeptical to engage. Jung warned that these moments often precede a breakthrough if met consciously. Recognizing resistance as part of the process can turn it from an enemy into an ally, marking the spots where real transformation waits. Next, we'll explore how to know when karmic debt in Jung's psychological sense has actually been cleared. If you're still watching, share. What's one thing you've been avoiding even though you know it could help you grow? For Jung, the signs of clearing aren't mystical fireworks. They're practical, observable shifts in daily life. You stop encountering the same pattern in the same way when it does arise. It no longer hooks you emotionally. you respond with choice instead of compulsion. Your dreams may shift, reflecting resolution rather than repetition of the old conflict symbols that once cared. Tension may now appear in calmer, more integrated forms. Relationships stabilize or certain toxic dynamics simply dissolve without dramatic confrontation. You may feel a quiet sense of completion in areas that once consumed you. There's often a sense of increased energy, as if the psychic budget once spent on old loops is now available for new pursuits. Inner criticism softens, self-compassion grows, not because you've decided to be nice to yourself, but because the parts of you once at war are now on speaking terms. Decisions feel clearer, you trust your instincts more, not because they're infallible, but because they're no longer clouded by the same unconscious bias. In karmic language, the ledger feels empty, not forgotten, but settled. There's no emotional charge left demanding replay. And perhaps most importantly, you stop looking for proof that the debt is gone. Life simply moves forward. In our final section, we'll address the misinterpretations of Jung's ideas about karma and debt, and why so many modern creators get it wrong. If you're still here, tell me, which of these signs would mean the most to you if you experienced it? Many modern creators use Jung's name to give weight to mystical claims he never made. They conflate his psychological framework with literal reincarnation accounting systems.
Some thoughtful voices: depth psychology analysis, mindset philosophy, B7P, the Legends Advice, the Soul Whisper 88, and Echoes of Psyche have shared Jung's ideas in creative ways. I appreciate their efforts to make depth psychology accessible, yet I've noticed some interpretations may gently drift from what Jung himself actually taught. For example, synchronicity is sometimes presented as divine proof that karmic debt is cleared. Jung's own view was more grounded. Synchronicity was the meaningful linking of inner and outer events, not a cosmic scoreboard or moral certification. ShadowWork is occasionally framed as a quick weekend process. While that might spark interest, Jung emphasized that real integration is slow, layered, and often uncomfortable. It requires living with your shadow, learning from it, and letting it reshape your choices. I've also seen individuation simplified to live your truth. A nice phrase, but Jung meant something more rigorous: the ongoing engagement with the unconscious that demands deep self-confrontation, not just self-expression or affirmations. Jung respected spiritual traditions but avoided turning psychology into fortune-telling or moralizing about past lives. To him, karmic debt was a metaphor for unresolved psychological material, nothing supernatural but profoundly meaningful when approached with honesty and courage. Academic work from Princeton University Press and lectures at ETH Zurich confirm this. Jung's genius was translating ancient symbols into a modern, testable, deeply human process, without losing their soul or complexity in the translation. When we skip this nuance, even with good intentions, we risk guiding people toward chasing signs instead of doing the real work. Pleasant coincidences can inspire, but they are not the same as genuine transformation. Real transformation, in Jung's sense, means facing the unconscious, integrating the shadow, breaking repetitive loops in action, and living from a more whole, present self. This is not a weekend project, but the work of a lifetime. To those creators and everyone listening, the truth might be harder, but it's far more rewarding. The reward isn't proof that a debt is paid. It's the quiet freedom of a life built on creation, not repayment. If this resonated, share your thoughts below, tag someone who'd value this, and let's keep the conversation real.